It was the third straight day of harvest, and the sky looked like it had been painted just for farmers. Wide, blue, and forgiving. The kind of sky that makes you believe hard work will pay off before sunset. I'd been in that cab since 5:12 a.m., watching golden rows of corn disappear into the header like clockwork. Every pass was smooth. Every yield monitor reading made me breathe easier. This wasn't just another harvest. This was the first harvest after the HOA decided they owned part of my boundary line. And I knew they were watching. 3 months earlier, a new development had popped up on the west side of my 140-acre family farm. Big gates. Stone pillars. A fancy wooden sign that read Silver Creek Estates. The homes weren't even fully finished before the complaints started. Too much tractor noise. Too much dust. Too much unsightly agricultural equipment. Unsightly. My grandfather bought this land in 1963. The soil still carries his sweat in it. Silver Creek Estates had been standing for 11 weeks. Then came the letter. Certified mail. Bold HOA letterhead. It claimed a 40-foot strip along my west field actually belonged to the subdivision's shared greenbelt buffer zone. They cited a community master plat. Problem was, I had the original county survey, the deed, and the tax records. That strip wasn't theirs. It never had been. I ignored the letter. They didn't ignore me. 2 weeks later, I found bright orange stakes driven straight into my corn rows, 40 feet deep into what they claimed was HOA land. They'd marked it like they were planning a park bench and a picnic table. I pulled every stake out before sundown. The next morning, I got a visit. Her name was Denise Hallbrook, HOA president. Perfectly pressed blazer. Sunglasses bigger than her authority. She stood at the edge of my field like she was inspecting a crime scene. You removed our markers, she said. You put them in my crop, I replied. She told me they'd escalate legally. I told her to bring a surveyor. They didn't bring a surveyor. They brought drama. Fast forward to harvest day. The west field was the highest yield section of the entire farm. I'd saved it for last because timing matters. Moisture levels were perfect. The combine hummed steady as I worked my way toward the boundary line. Then I saw it. A white SUV parked right inside the claimed strip. Hazard lights blinking. Denise stepped out, phone in hand, filming. I slowed but didn't stop. That land was mine. She walked closer. Too close. I stopped the combine fully this time and opened the cab door. You're trespassing on HOA property, she shouted. No, Denise, I said evenly. You're trespassing on a working harvest. She lifted her phone higher. Then she did something reckless. She walked behind the combine and started waving her arms, yelling about property violations. I couldn't see her clearly in the blind spot, and that's when it happened. Her SUV rolled. She'd left it in neutral. It drifted straight into the side of my tractor parked nearby, the older one I used for grain carts. Metal scraped. Glass cracked. The impact wasn't catastrophic, but it was loud enough to turn heads from a quarter-mile away. She gasped like I'd rammed her intentionally. Then she did what I should have expected from the beginning. She called the police. I climbed down slowly and took pictures of everything, tire positions, impact angles, her vehicle placement inside my crop. I didn't say another word. 10 minutes later, 2 county deputies pulled up. Denise ran toward them before I could even wipe the dust off my hands. He deliberately destroyed HOA property, she yelled, pointing at me like I'd committed a felony. The deputy looked at the SUV, then at my tractor, then at the corn rows flattened under her tires. He asked one simple question. Ma'am, why were you parked inside a standing crop? Her confidence faltered. She started talking about greenbelt buffers and community boundaries. That's when I walked to my truck and pulled out the folder I'd prepared months ago. Survey maps, county stamps, deed copies, and one very interesting document I hadn't needed until now. The deputies studied the paperwork quietly. Denise kept insisting it was HOA land. The deputy finally looked up. Sir, he asked me, do you want to press charges for vehicle damage and crop loss? Denise's face went pale. Harvest wasn't even finished yet. And this was just the beginning. The deputy didn't rush to arrest me. He didn't even look impressed by Karen's dramatic hand gestures. He just asked one simple question. Sir, do you have documentation proving this is HOA property? Karen smiled like she'd been waiting for that moment her whole life. She marched back to her SUV and pulled out a thick binder.
Tabs.
Highlighters. Sticky notes. She slapped it onto the hood like a courtroom reveal. This entire parcel, she said loudly, tapping a page, is designated as a HOA-controlled greenbelt. He's trespassing and destroying community property. I almost laughed. Greenbelt? This was 180 acres of privately deeded farmland that's been in my family since 1968. The deputy flipped through her binder carefully. His face stayed neutral. Too neutral. Then he turned to me. Sir, can you show me your deed? I walked to my truck and pulled out the laminated property map I keep behind the seat. Not because I expected HOA drama, but because when you farm this much land, you learn fast that paper trails matter. I handed it over. The deputy compared the two documents side by side. Karen's confidence began to crack. Because her map stopped at the subdivision fence line. Mine continued another half-mile beyond it. The deputy cleared his throat. Ma'am, the greenbelt ends here, he said, pointing. This cornfield is outside HOA jurisdiction. Karen's face went pale. That's not right, she snapped. We voted on expanding oversight last year. The deputy looked at her again. You can't vote to take someone else's private property. Silence. Even the harvest engine idling nearby felt louder. But Karen wasn't finished. She pointed toward the dirt service road cutting through the field. That access road connects to our subdivision. That makes it HOA maintained. He doesn't have the right to operate heavy equipment on it. Now I finally spoke. That road predates your entire neighborhood, I said calmly. It's recorded in county easement records under agricultural use. The deputy nodded slowly. I'll verify that. Karen folded her arms. This isn't over. And she was right, because that's when she crossed the line. While the deputy walked toward his patrol car to radio in the parcel numbers, Karen got back into her SUV. I thought she was leaving. She wasn't. She threw the vehicle into drive. And instead of backing out the way she came, she tried to swing around my combine. The field was soft from last night's irrigation cycle. Her luxury SUV didn't stand a chance. The tires spun. Mud sprayed everywhere. And in one reckless, panicked attempt to prove she owned the land, she gunned it straight into the rear tire of my tractor. The impact wasn't high speed, but it was loud. Metal hit steel. Her head snapped forward against the seatbelt. The deputy whipped around. I shut the engine off immediately. The entire field went silent. Karen stepped out of the SUV, looking furious and embarrassed. He boxed me in, she shouted. He damaged my vehicle. The deputy walked slowly toward the scene. Ma'am, he said evenly, did you just drive through an active agricultural harvest zone? She didn't answer. She pointed at the scuff mark on her SUV. He intentionally blocked me. The deputy looked at the tire tracks. Then he looked at the deep ruts where her wheels had dug into my planted rows. Then he looked at the scrape on my tractor's metal wheel housing. You drove into farm equipment, he said calmly. That equipment was stationary. Karen opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The deputy sighed. I need everyone to remain here. He walked back to his patrol car. 10 minutes later, another unit arrived. Not for me. For documentation. Because what Karen didn't realize was this. Agricultural equipment on privately deeded farmland has right-of-way priority under state statute during active harvest. And she had just admitted on camera that she entered the field intentionally. The second officer began photographing everything.
The combine.
The ruts. The damaged rows. Her SUV. Karen finally started to understand. This is ridiculous, she muttered. The deputy looked at her one last time. Ma'am, you may want to call your insurance. Because this wasn't a trespassing case anymore. This was vehicular property damage. And the harvest had only just begun. By the time the police cruiser rolled away that first afternoon, Karen had already turned the story into something it wasn't. According to her version, I was harvesting illegally on protected HOA property, operating dangerous farm equipment near a residential zone, and intimidating homeowners. She left out the part where she'd rammed her luxury SUV into my tractor's rear tire while I was mid-pass through my own cornfield. Word spreads fast in neighborhoods like that. Within 24 hours, 3 different board members had driven down the dirt road that bordered my south fence line, parking just close enough to stare but not close enough to step onto my land. They were nervous, and they should have been, because that night, I pulled out every document my grandfather had ever saved.
Deeds.
Surveys. Old tax receipts dating back to the 1960s. A yellowing plat map showing the original property boundaries long before the HOA even existed. I laid them across my kitchen table and started connecting the dots. That's when I saw it. The HOA's entire Phase 3 expansion, the section where Karen's house sat, was built right up against my eastern boundary.
Close.
Uncomfortably close. But not over it. At least not officially. The next morning, I called a licensed surveyor. Not the cheap kind. The kind who shows up with GPS equipment, boundary pins, and zero patience for nonsense. If Karen wanted to play the "this is HOA land" game, we were going to settle it with coordinates. 2 days later, the survey crew arrived. And that's when things started getting interesting. They began at the northwest marker, an old iron rod embedded in concrete, exactly where the county records said it would be. From there, they worked clockwise, marking lines with fluorescent paint and tall orange flags. Karen showed up before they even reached the halfway point. She didn't come alone. She brought 2 board members and her phone, already recording. "You're trespassing on community property," she declared loudly, angling the camera at the survey team. "This will be reported." The surveyor didn't even look up. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "we're operating under a legal survey request filed with the county. If you interfere, you'll be cited." That shut her up for about 30 seconds. Then she tried a different tactic. "Your fence is wrong," she snapped at me. "It's been wrong for years. We've always maintained that strip." Maintained. Interesting word choice. Because when the surveyors reached the southeast corner, the one closest to Karen's backyard, they stopped, checked their readings, rechecked them. Then one of them walked over to me. "You're going to want to see this." The flagged line didn't just brush against the HOA's maintained strip. It cut straight through it. A clean, undeniable line. And that maintained strip? It wasn't theirs. It was mine. 16 feet deep along nearly 400 yards of boundary. 16 feet that the HOA had been mowing, landscaping, and claiming as part of their common area for almost 8 years. And here's the kicker. Karen's decorative stone garden? Half of it sat on that strip. The back corner of her brand-new privacy fence? 3 feet over. Her sprinkler line? Fully embedded in my soil. She went pale. You could actually see the realization hit her. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was encroachment. And unlike her accusation against me, this one came with GPS data, stamped documents, and a licensed professional ready to testify. She tried to argue. Tried to say the original developer must have made a mistake. The surveyor just shrugged. Boundaries don't move because someone builds over them.
I didn't say much that day.
I didn't need to. Because for the first time since she'd hit my tractor, Karen wasn't talking like someone in control. She was talking like someone who just realized the ground under her feet, quite literally, wasn't hers. And the best part? The survey wasn't even finished yet. By the time the sheriff arrived, the entire west field looked like a courtroom. My tractor sat half-idling, one massive tire pressed against crushed corn stalks. Karen's SUV was parked crooked across the dirt access lane, hazard lights blinking dramatically like she was starring in her own emergency documentary. She was mid-performance when Deputy Collins stepped out of his cruiser. "There he is," Karen shouted, pointing at me like I'd just robbed a bank. "He's trespassing. This entire section is HOA property. He nearly ran me over." I didn't even flinch. "Deputy," I said calmly, "the deed to this land is recorded with the county under parcel 17B. I can pull it up right now." Karen laughed, actually laughed, like I'd just told a joke. "You farmers always think dirt makes you powerful. Deputy Collins adjusted his hat and looked at the field. Then he looked at the tire tracks. Then at Karen's SUV, which was clearly several feet inside my crop rows. "Ma'am," he asked slowly, "why is your vehicle off the gravel and inside planted acreage?" "It's HOA land," she snapped. "He's illegally farming it." That's when I did something she didn't expect. I handed the deputy a laminated survey map I kept inside the tractor cab. 3 months earlier, after the HOA tried claiming a drainage ditch on my southern border, I had commissioned a full professional boundary survey. Stakes were driven. Coordinates were recorded. Everything documented. I don't gamble with land. Deputy Collins studied the map. He stepped off distance from a survey marker still sticking up near the fence line. Karen crossed her arms. "That survey is fake. We have community maps." "From what year?" the deputy asked. 1998. He nodded slowly. "This survey was certified 90 days ago," he said. "And it aligns with county GIS records." Karen's face shifted, just slightly, but she doubled down. "Well then, he's violating HOA guidelines by running commercial machinery within community view." The deputy blinked. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "this parcel is zoned agricultural. The HOA has no jurisdiction over agricultural land outside its recorded subdivision boundary." Silence. The kind that lands heavy. You could almost hear the wind move through the broken corn stalks. She looked at me like she wanted the earth itself to swallow me whole. "That's impossible," she whispered. I didn't smile. I just reached into the tractor cab again and handed over one more document. The recorded subdivision plat map. Highlighted. The HOA boundary ended 312 feet before my western fence. Karen had driven 312 feet beyond her authority straight into my harvest. Deputy Collins exhaled. "Ma'am," he said gently but firmly, "you're currently on private agricultural property. You entered cropland without permission and obstructed active farm operations." "And he almost hit me," she shot back. "He was harvesting," the deputy replied. "You drove into the field." The weight of that sentence hung there. Karen's confidence cracked for the first time. But she still had one card left. "I want him charged with reckless endangerment." Deputy Collins looked at me. "Sir, were you aware she was behind you?"
"No, sir."
She came from the blind side between rows. He walked around the tractor, inspecting. Then he crouched near the front tire. There it was. A long streak of metallic paint scraped along the rubber. Her SUV had hit my tractor, not the other way around. The deputy stood up slowly. "Ma'am," he said, "based on impact marks, your vehicle made contact with his equipment." The performance was over. No more shouting. No more pointing. Just reality. And then came the line that ended her afternoon. "Ma'am, I'm going to need your license and registration." Her eyes widened. "For what?" "For investigation of property damage and unlawful entry." The field went quiet. The HOA Karen who had marched into my harvest convinced she owned the dirt beneath her feet was now being documented for trespassing. She tried one last time. "You don't understand. I'm the HOA president." Deputy Collins didn't even hesitate. "Not out here." That was the moment she realized something critical. The HOA wasn't the law. And farmland doesn't answer to subdivision politics. But the story wasn't finished. Because when the insurance adjuster showed up the next morning, he brought news Karen absolutely did not see coming. And it wasn't about the tractor. It was about the road she used to get there. By the time the sheriff's cruiser lights faded from the edge of my field, the story had already spread across the county. Karen didn't just hit my tractor. She lied to law enforcement. She filed a false report. She tried to weaponize the HOA against land that wasn't even remotely theirs. And she got caught doing all of it. The sheriff had been polite but firm. After reviewing the dash cam footage, the GPS boundary maps, and the recorded phone call she made claiming active trespass on HOA agricultural reserve property, his patience ran out. "There is no HOA agricultural reserve," he said flatly. And just like that, her entire narrative collapsed. The letter that ended her presidency. 3 days later, every homeowner in that subdivision received a certified envelope. Inside, A formal legal notice from my attorney outlining a verified county property boundaries, a cease and desist order against harassment, a civil claim for equipment damage and crop loss, a notice of potential personal liability for board members who knowingly supported false claims. And the most devastating line of all, the association has no legal claim, easement, covenant, or shared access agreement regarding Parcel 17B. That's my field, not theirs. Never was. By the end of the week, an emergency HOA meeting was called. But this time, Karen wasn't running it. She'd been forced to step down pending investigation after homeowners realized something terrifying. If she lied about my land, what else had she lied about? The financial reality hit hard. The repair bill for my tractor came in just under $38,400. Front axle damage, hydraulic line rupture, cab frame misalignment, electronics recalibration. Modern farm equipment isn't cheap. And during peak harvest season, downtime is devastating. But thanks to her insurance adjuster reviewing the footage and police report, liability was crystal clear. They paid every dollar, plus documented crop loss from the half-acre flattened during her reckless turn. She tried to argue contributory negligence. The adjuster laughed. The silent victory. Here's what nobody talks about in these situations. Winning isn't loud. It's quiet. It's finishing your harvest 2 weeks later than planned, but still ahead of the rain. It's watching grain trucks line up under a pink sunset. It's knowing the land your grandfather bought with sweat and blisters is still yours. That field? It yielded 196 bushels per acre this year. One of my best outputs in 5 seasons. And every single time I drive past the property line sign, freshly repainted and reinforced, I remember something important. Boundaries matter, especially when someone tries to erase them. The subdivision's unexpected apology. About a month later, I got a knock on my door. Not Karen. 3 homeowners. They looked uncomfortable. One of them held a store-bought pie like it was a peace offering at a medieval negotiation. They apologized. Said they never knew she'd escalated things that far. Said most of them assumed the HOA actually owned that strip of land. Said they were reviewing all past board decisions now. I didn't gloat.
Didn't need to.
I just told them something simple. I don't mind neighbors. I mind entitlement. They nodded. And for the first time since that collision, I felt like maybe we could coexist. At a distance. And Karen? Last I heard, she moved. House listed. Sold below asking. Board restructuring underway. Turns out, weaponizing authority only works when people believe you. Once trust is gone, so is power. The real lesson. This wasn't about corn, or tractors, or even a dented fender. It was about assumption. She assumed. HOA authority extended past legal boundaries. Police would side with her automatically. A farmer wouldn't fight back. A land without fences must be unclaimed. She was wrong on every count. Because land ownership isn't decided by volume. It's decided by law. And sometimes the quiet guy in the combine? He's holding all the paperwork. Final thought. Harvest season ended. The field is bare now. But the property line sign stands taller than it ever has.
Clear.
Marked.
Documented.
And respected. Some lessons cost money. Others cost reputation. Hers cost both. If you've ever dealt with someone who confused authority with ownership, you already know. Boundaries don't need to shout. They just need to hold.